On behalf of the United Nations, I greet His Excellency Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, President of the Republic of Ghana. I now invite His Excellency the President to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, I appear before you today on a sad and solemn occasion, the first meeting of the General Assembly since the murder of the Prime Minister of the Congo, Patrice Lumumba. History records many occasions when rulers of states have been done to death. The assassination of Patrice Lumumba, however, is unique in that this is the first time in history that the ruler of a country has been killed in the very presence of the United Nations forces, whom he himself had invited to his country to restore law and order. That such a thing could have happened must make all those of us who believe in the United Nations anxious about its future. I must therefore state quite clearly that any comment or criticism that I have occasion to make on the United Nations action in the Congo is not intended to disparage its efforts or to undermine its authority. As I said in my last address to this August Assembly, the United Nations is indeed the greatest hope for the peace and security of the world. I believe we must stand fourscore on what is one of the most important principles of international law and basic to the whole conception of the United Nations. The significance of the Congo situation is that it gave the United Nations an opportunity to reassess its authority. If speedy and effective action is taken now in the Congo, the United Nations will have that prestige and moral backing which it must have if it is to tackle other, even greater world problems that it may have to face in the future. I have in mind the problems bound to arise over Angola, Mozambique, the Union of South Africa, Rwanda, Burundi, Southwest Africa, Algeria, the Rhodesias, and other African colonial territories. These are all potential problems for the United Nations, and the United Nations must work out now the machinery which can be used to solve such problems should the necessity arise. In one of his first addresses in regard to the Congo situation, the Secretary General himself underlined and emphasized this need for speedy and effective action by the nations of the world. Addressing the Assembly Council on the 22nd of July, 1960, he said, and I quote him, "There should not be any hesitation because we are at a turn of the road where our attitude will be of decisive significance. I believe not only for the future of the United Nations organization, but also for the future of Africa. And Africa may well, in present circumstances, mean the world," unquote. I entirely endorse what the General Secretary, the Secretary General, then said. I believe that non-committed countries of the world have now the opportunity of working out within a United Nations framework practical plans which can solve the Congo crisis, restore the prestige of the United Nations, and remove the threat of hot war occasioned by continued disorder in the Congo. No such plan, however, is possible unless it is set in an African framework with the independent states of Africa and the Asian countries playing the leading role in its accomplishment. Some little time ago, I asked the Secretary General to circulate to the members of the Security Council a number of concrete proposals on which I believe a settlement could be based. I have come here today to put these proposals before the General Assembly. As I said when I last addressed this assembly, the Congo is the heart of Africa. Any wound inflicted upon the Congo is a wound to the whole of Africa. Outside intervention in the Congo is a threat to the independence of every African state and a further extension of the Cold War. It is with these considerations in mind that I put my proposal before you. They are, first, a new and strengthened United Nations civil and military command should be established in the Congo. Second, this command and the contingents under it must be primarily African and should take over complete responsibility for law and order in the Congo. Third, all Congolese armed units should be disarmed. This disarming will involve their return to barracks and the surrender of their weapons to the new United Nations command. Fourth, the disarming and handing over should be voluntary and should lead to the reorganization and retraining of the Congolese National Army. But if certain factions will not cooperate, force must be used. Fifth, all non-African personnel serving in the Congolese army must be expelled immediately. Sixth, the United Nations Command should control the major air and sea ports in the Congo so that the flow of arms and equipment to warring factions may be stopped and adequate support for United Nations troops be guaranteed. Seventh, all foreign diplomatic missions and representatives should immediately leave the Congo for the time being in order to give this new United Nations Command a fair chance and to eliminate the Cold War from the Congo. Eighth, once the military situation has been brought under control on these lines, all political prisoners must be released by the new United Nations Command, and the new command